I'm Brownfield anchor reporter Meghan Grebner. With us today is Andrew Penney, who is an agronomist with DEKALB Asgrow. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the 2021 planting season. We're just around the corner, Andrew, as we look ahead at the upcoming weeks. What are some things that farmers need to consider?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we all learned a lot from last year. 2020 was a rough growing season in many parts, especially here in Iowa. There's a lot of commonalities. You look across the Corn Belt and the Midwest. I think the biggest one that I think guys should really focus on are planting conditions. There's a lot of states that are a little bit drier than they're used to. And so, we had a number of growers experience drier conditions last year at planting. And, that kind of led to some problems, especially if you got guys running that cultivator through just prior to planting. So, if you find yourself in that scenario, I would definitely recommend going out and checking the soil moisture and trying to make a ball of taking a ball of soil in your hand and checking that moisture. And if you do think you're a little bit dry, maybe plant a little bit deeper. Typically we plant at around 2 inches. But if we're a little bit drier, I would recommend going a little bit deeper, maybe 2.25, 2.5, so that when we do get a rain and that soil settles, we're not ended up with shallow seed. So I think that's definitely a consideration people should think about. And then I would say the second biggest thing is, we're kind of in a pattern and looking at some Iowa State data, we're in a pattern of maybe extreme weather. And so, whether it's extreme drought or extreme moisture, I think you need to take into consideration hybrid and variety selection, picking the hybrids and varieties that have high yield potential, but also have really good stress tolerance, whether it's drought or warm temperatures.
We have this fairly mild winter. Does that set the stage for more challenges when it comes to pests and disease pressure this year? And is that something growers need to think about as we get underway?
Yeah, so there's definitely certain pests, rootworm comes to mind that can definitely be impacted by, the whole, how deep does the soil freeze in the moderate winters. Diseases, I think that's kind of one of those things that, you can look at last year, there's certain diseases that are just always going to be around, once those spores are in the residue, they're going to be there the following growing season. And so, I think, in a lot of parts of the country, especially here in Iowa, we were a little bit drier and disease pressure was a little bit lower. So, the inoculum didn't build up, but it's still going to be there. So I think that's something, you still need to focus on hybrid selection and making sure you have genetic resistance to those diseases. And then rootworm pressure, if you're in one of those states that had drier than normal moisture levels or moisture for 2020, rootworm is definitely something that, a droughty type environment can definitely help you realize you have rootworm problems you may not know you had.
Andrew, as we talk, you mentioned being drier in some areas as we start. How concerned are we about drought conditions in maybe looking at like the Western Corn Belt? I know you're in Iowa, but if we're talking about those areas that are already dry and maybe that reaching out and extending into maybe Iowa, Illinois, more eastward.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a concern. Like I said, looking at historical data and again, going back to some Iowa State data, I think we were maybe 20 to 22 years left roughly of these extreme weather events. And so, there are states that are typically drier than what we deal with. And going in, if we're going into a 2021 planting season drier than normal, and you're not expecting to get much rain, that's definitely something you got to consider. So, there are regions, especially, Nebraska has some irrigation, but then there's spots that don't, right? And so, I think that, again, I think going into 2021, maybe planning for the worst, hoping for the best, again, focusing on those hybrids that have the genetics that can really tolerate stress and drought is definitely something you can do to help maintain yields across those type of environments.
Andrew, as we wrap up our conversation today, talk to me a little bit about some of the things you're excited about, maybe for growers to be able to have access to, and some new products as well.
Yeah, so I think, fortunately, I'm just glad to be part of Bayer. I think because we have such a new product line and new technology coming out. And so I think the biggest things I'm excited for are Smart Stacks Pro. So we have Smart Stacks Pro coming out that just got approved not too long ago. And And so that's basically a whole new mode of action for rootworm control. And so that's something we haven't seen in quite some time. And, being from Iowa and having, rootworms be such an issue in a lot of our corn on corn environments, that's gonna be a pretty big deal for growers. So that's probably the first thing. I think the second thing I'm most excited for, I think everybody deals with weed resistance. And so, we have our new XtendFlex beans coming out where we can use dicamba and glufosinate. And so, just giving growers that extra option is a pretty big deal. And so, as we continue to deal with weed resistance, that's going to, just strengthen the importance of having those options.
Andrew, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Hey, Megan, it was great meeting you, and thanks for having me.
I'm Meghan Grebner for Brownfield.